independent sample t-test, which helps us to understand if there exists any statistical difference between variables in our study, right? Welcome. So our interest is to be able to examine, like you can see from my slide, it says that the PET t-test is also considered as the dependent t-test. And what we basically use it to determine whether the mean of a dependent variable varies amongst or between or two related groups. Now, the key word from this is the aspect of related groups. When we talked with respect to the independent sample t-test, we said the two groups were unrelated. So there were groups that had nothing in common. And the idea of nothing in common is a member of group 1 is completely different from a member of group 2. You see male and female, right? We all agree that male and female, if you're a male, you're a female, you're a female. And I said some countries, that difference is being blurred away. There's gender mutilation, I don't know how they call those things, but trying to transform and have come up with a new gender ID. But traditionally, we know, following the principle of biology, we have male and female, right? Those are two independent categories. Now, most of the time, we want to check if the two groups of participants that we measure at two different points are the same or they are different. And I give an example. Let's assume that you are teaching, you're a teacher. And so you're teaching students and you taught them first semester and you have taught them again second semester. Are you interested in seeing how the changes of this student has been? So you could use the independent sample t-test rather than just using the mean and standard deviation as we saw earlier, right? Which is the descriptive part. Now, the first semester, the student had marks. The second semester, we have the same students. Now with the new marks. So because we have the same groups of persons having repeated measures, we use the dependent sample t-test. Such a test, we use it when we're doing intervention. We want to intervene and see whether the intervention has an effect, right? We can use it. So before we use the independent sample t-test, we have always said that any of the tests we see, what is the test and areas of application, right? So it's a test used to examine if the means of the two related groups are the same or they're significantly different. And we apply it in a conditions where we have the same variables. The same cases, when I use cases or the same observations in two, maybe different intervals. We have given the case of studying or an exam's participation. The same students have the same marks over and over. Or you want to check if the standard of living of persons have changed over time, right? Maybe you measured when they're at the age of 20, now they're 30. Is there any significant difference in their income? It's the same persons, right? But we income at different time intervals. You want to see if people's level of happiness increases with time. So you can take measure their happiness level at two different intervals, right? So those are possible ways or possible scenarios that are the 1001 ways that you can use this test or scenarios. So, like we stated, one of the things we always do is to test the assumptions of our test. We cannot go ahead and use this test assumptions, and so we have to check the assumptions to see if truly the data we have it's ideal for us to use the independent sample t-test. And so we have to check the assumptions. The first assumptions, as we will see, is what? Who can state us the first assumption? Yes, our independent variable should be continuous. Our independent variable should be continuous. And we understand what we mean by continuity of an independent variable. Can either be ratio or interval, sorry. And we can also call it scaled or quantitative, as some people will classify, right? That's the first. The second assumption. The first assumption is linked with the dependent variable. The second assumption is linked with the categorical variable. And the categorical variable here refers to what? The independent variable. Now, the second assumption says your independent variable should consist of two categories. So the keyword there is two categories, and these categories must be what? Related. Yes, the two groups must be related. So we call it matched pairs, related groups, yes. Which means that the sample subjects are input groups. That's another way of saying that they are related. The subjects, the participants, the observations, the cases, they are in both groups. You get it? So that's the meaning of related. So the reason is that it is possible to have the same subjects in each group measured at two different intervals or two different occasions. We've just given the example. Measuring happiness over time, or maybe at two different times. What is the level of happiness? The level of happiness varies when maybe you just meet somebody for the first time, and as you progress, does it change? We can also measure that. There are different ways. As a researcher, you know, there are so many things you need to be able to interrogate and to find out, right? What is the level of happiness? How does the level of happiness of fans change significantly when they win a match and when they draw? Or is it the same, right? You see that the same fans we can evaluate at two different points and see, does the level of happiness of children varies when their parents give them money at the start of the year, or when you give them at the end of the year when they perform well. So it might not look scientific, but as a researcher, some of those little things, they seem little, but they're necessary because from research, some amendments can be done, right? You know when to give motivation to students. Should we give motivation before you do something, or we do give motivation after performance? Some people argue that at least you should be motivated, right? And tell you that if you achieve this, this is what I will give you. And it will encourage you to achieve that rather than waiting that you achieve it before I motivate you. So is this scientifically verifiable? We can change that with data. Now we also know that we talk about outliers, which is as any other statistical measure that is parametric inclined, right? As any other statistical measure that assumes that the data come from what? A normal distribution. We expect that the data should be what? Should not have significant outliers. The outliers should not be such that they can distort the data. They can cause the data not to be, they can cause the mean not to be at the center. It can skew the data positively or negatively significantly, right? That day, skewness should fall in between -1 and 1, and not out of that range. That's another way of putting it if you're using statistics. And so we also talk about the normal assumption of normality. We need to test for normality. It's important and I indicated here that we talk about what? Approximately normally distributed, because in real world, it's difficult to find data that will be perfectly normally distributed. So we're doing by approximation, right? Yes. With real world data is more difficult. Now, one of the things we are doing with the data that we're using, you discover that it's fairly normally distributed in most of the cases, and the data is already clean. But in practical cases, data comes not ready-made for use. You have to take time and do proper cleaning. Check for outliers. Maybe some variables were not inputted. You need to input. Go back to the data and verify, right? Yes. So some of those things you get them with time. Now, we talk about a PET test only requiring what? Approximately normally distributed, because it is quite robust. And so the robust nature of the test means even when the assumption of normality is slightly violated, we still have results that can be reliable. You get it? Yes. I mean, if it's slightly violated. And that's where we also talk about what? Significant outliers and not just outliers. Any question? Any question? Any worry? So today will be sharper. We'll not spend much time. We'll have to do a number today and finish, so that our next class we'll do correlation and maybe we'll start regression. Those are our last maybe key significant topics. Regression takes a lot of time. So we'll have to dig deeper. Madam Glory, this one that you're smiling, are we out together? Any worry? I recommend that you go back on the YouTube channel and follow the classes, right? Take time. There's internet here. Come and download. Oh, you can follow online. It's just that we don't have. So you have access to some of the most of the classes are uploaded. Just a few are not online. But most of the classes will upload them for you to go, and so you can have a continuous knowledge with respect to what we have covered. You get it? And it gives you opportunity to refollow the class. Even at times, I still go back and follow the lectures, maybe to get a perspective of the class and to equally know maybe areas to improve. So you should do that. The materials out there on the YouTube channel for you to follow. So common applications, we've said, if you want to determine whether drinking a glass of wine has the same effect on the impact of memory. Yeah, you want to evaluate with respect to memory. So we have different ways we've talked about it. Now, like we said, before you analyze any data inferential, we always have to have in mind your alternative and null hypothesis. They are very vital because they give you a direction. What's our null hypothesis and what is our alternative hypothesis? So we have some cases here. Example 1 says a clinic provides a program to help their clients lose weight and asks consumers agency to investigate the effectiveness of the program. It takes into a sample of 15 participants. I think I will share this data for you to go and check that. After a period of 3 months, they want to verify if that program is actually effective, right? You have to check that with data. Another example. Research question, is there any differences in the marks following a teaching intervention? Now, a new teaching approach is adopted maybe nationwide or a standard, there's always a test to verify. Now, you have invented a new teaching method and you want that we should embrace it as the best way. What happens is that you have to prove to us that that teaching method improves performance significantly. You get that? And so to do that, we may have to take on students, evaluate their performance before that intervention. And when you come and you introduce a teaching method to evaluate their performance. Now, at times we can use both dependent and independent sample tests, and that we may want to another group of students that will not embark on your method and the students that will embark on your method, right? And we evaluate the performance of your students before method and after the method, as well as we compare performance between the two groups. So we discovered that in the same study, we may use the independent sample t-test because we have two groups known as the control and the experimental groups. And we equally have the paired because we have students that have taken that test before and they're taking after the intervention. You get that? So it's not like this test you use them, they can be concurrent depending on your research questions. We have seen, we have seen per sample, independent, one sample, we have seen chi-square, we have seen descriptive, all of them, they work together, right? In a single study, you may use all of them depending on the research questions you have, especially applied study. There may be so many things that you want to verify, right? You can say, okay, after collecting data for male and female, you may want to use the independent sample t-test, right? You may want to see there's some variables that are categorical, you want to use chi-square. Do you get it? So don't see them as standalone statistical technique. What guides you is your data and the research questions that you want to verify. You have our hypothesis. So don't see them as the tests that once you pick up one in a study, you cannot use. Do you get that? Yeah, so you can use so many of these tests in a single study, depending on what we're trying to get. Although most often we might not have so many of them in the same study. But not that there is room for you to use multiple tests in a single study. So I think this is the data. And the question now, how do we use SPSS? Now in SPSS, I know there is something that I don't know if we indicated to you how to set up. The way you set up data in SPSS for the one sample, for the independent sample t-test, and the way you set up for the dependent sample t-test, they're relatively different. Pardon? Yes, I want to emphasize that now. Now, what happens is that with the dependent sample t-test, we have just two columns. A column for our independent variable, let's say IGV, and another column for what? Dependent variable, DV. Do you get it? But for our dependent sample t-test, we have about 3 columns. Now, the first column that we have carries what? Our independent variable, IGV. The second column carries the first scenario, right? For instance, here you see that we have the first exams and the second exams, right? Then we have our categories. So if your data is not set up at this format, you will not be able to run it in SPSS. And so do many of the statistical techniques. Why? Because if you look at this data, this is what you need to notice. Here, the student, let's say it was student, the student here was a male, right? In the first exam, he had what? 27. In the second, we had what? 25. So the system needs to be able to identify that these two figures are tied to this particular candidate. Do you get it? But in the other test, you discover that this is not how it is. We have everything aligned in the one column. So it's important for you to notice that. So this is our before scenario and our after scenario. So if you check here, you discover that, let's say respondent 8, before the person had 27, thereafter the person has what? 28, which means there's an increase by 1, right? Can there be a drop? Yes. Let's say respondent 10 was a she, there was no difference. 19 in both scenarios, right? And for the other person, 12 was a he. In the first, the person was 23, and there is a reduction by 2, but now has 21. Do you get that? So that is the principle of dependent sample that you have to scenario. So each participant in our study must have scores on 2 areas. If you have a mark in the first exam, you have. So if somebody has a mark in the second exam and do not have in the first, then you don't include the person. The data is incomplete. It depends on if 0 is part of your marks, then 0. If the person does not participate in the exam, then we see that the place should be what? Completely empty. So we cannot include such a participant in our study. Do you get that? Okay. So let's see how we can do it now in SPSS. Any question? Any worry? Any worry? Nobody has a worry. So let's open our data set that we used in our previous class. When we start revision, we'll use a lot of different SQL data to just for us to, but for now we maintain this one so that most of the time we are already familiar with the data. So today we want to use SPSS to be able to run the independent sample t-test. Now, we want to verify if there is any significant difference between reading and writing among the students that we have, right? So we have data for reading. This is our variable for reading, and this is writing. So we're asking ourselves if the performance of this student is significantly different. Now, there are 2 scenarios. They have marks for the first, for 1, which is the reading, and they have marks for writing. You get it? Yes. Normally, this can constitute 2 variables. Do you get it? Not necessarily 1 variable, but I want us to see that we are trying to treat them as what? Maybe the first reading and the second writing as what? Reading 1, reading 2, just to make it uniform, right? Yes. So to do that, we still go back to our SPSS. We click on Analyze. Like you probably made this class to be 2 monologue. Someone, the other person talking, you are just there, nodding your head. Some are sleeping. You should not be listeners. Ask questions. Because if you don't ask questions, I'll just be going, which is not good. So we go to compare means, we take on PET sample t-test. I'm not sharing my screen. I'm sharing my screen. It's not showing your own screen, but you have the data set, right? Open the data so you can follow the instruction without necessarily seeing what I'm doing, I believe. The data set of, yes, that's the data that we're using. So we go to Analyze, compare means, we pick on pair sample, and our pair sample comes, and we take on, let's take English. What do we say? Reading and writing, right? So in the first box, variable 1, we have reading, and then we send variable 2 as writing. we can equally bring in the other pair, let's say maths and what now? In English. Who is not there and why are you not there? You've not opened the data set? So where is your problem? Are we there together now? Reading and writing, the second two variables are writing. The second one is, was it English and writing? Reading and writing. The second one, math and English. You just want to exam. We can just take the reading and writing. Forget about the math and English for now. You get that? Yes, because there are two independent variables that we are trying to verify that don't have anything in common. Don't get confused. We just take the first one, reading and writing, and we check the results. So look at the results. For me, where is the performance better? Is it in terms of writing or reading? Pardon? Yes, where is 95% default? So for reading, what's the mean? Pardon? 82 for reading. And what's for writing? So where is performance better? Reading, right? So students perform better in reading. Let's check the variation. Where is variation higher? Is it in reading or in writing? Variation is also equally higher in reading. Do we all accept? Are we all like, why are you people fidgeting now? Let's participate in a way that others can get to. So, what's the conclusion? Students perform better in reading than writing. Now, the question is that difference significant? That's where we go now to the paired sample t-test, right? So under the paired sample t-test, we are looking at the mean difference. So we have for reading, we have a difference of 2.5 this. You know where that mean is coming from, right? The difference between 82 minus 90, 79 to give us this figure. We have our variation, the variation. Then we have our upper and lower limits. We have our t value, and we have our probability. No, it doesn't matter. We're just adding. It doesn't have anything to do with our results. So what do we notice? Can we conclude that the performance of students significantly differs between reading and writing? If we're saying reading 1 and reading 2, so they perform better in which one? Reading 1 or let's assume that reading one is reading 2 is writing. So what would be the conclusion? That the first reading, right? In the second one, the performance was poor. Do you get that? Now, when we use the independent sample t-test, we have tests for equality of variance. There was a test used for equality of variance known as what? The Levene's test, right? And in independent sample t-test, in the paired sample t-test, we have what we call the correlation test. Now, since we're dealing with related, our interest is, are the two variables related? And that's why we have the correlation. Now, we'll talk about correlation maybe tomorrow's class that establish whether the two variables are related or not. Do you get that? If the two variables are related. Correlation establishes relationship between two variables. So we'll discuss more on correlation tomorrow. So now, in reporting our results, we say whether we notice that there's a significant difference, right? We'll report our means, our standard deviation, we'll bring in our t-value with the degree of freedom and our probability, right? As we saw with the independent sample test, indicating whether there's a significant difference or the difference is higher or lower, depending on what we are trying to evaluate. Do you get that? Yes. And so at the end of the day, we should be able to make recommendation based on the results that we have. Yes. We can use the standard error. You get it? Yes, but most of the time, persons go with standard deviation. Yes. The standard error is equally good, especially when you want to use to standardize your values. You get that? Yes. Where because there are situations where we want to standardize everything. We have a mean of 0 and a standard deviation of 1. That gives us our normal distribution, Z-score. You know about Z-score? You get that? You know about Z-score? But we even mentioned it in this class, right? It's one of these things we use to test for significant outliers also. So this is all we can say with respect to the paired sample tree test. As a recap, 1, we use the paired sample tree test when we have related variables, related measures, related groups, right? In other words, if we have measured and we discover that the variables have the observations have repeated measures, we can use the independent sample test. However, for us to use it, we need to verify its assumption. The first assumption is that our dependent variable must be continuous. Our independent variable must have 2 categories, which are the 2 levels of measures. And the third is the presence, or they should not have significant outliers, and the third has to do with normality. Those are the key assumptions. Do you get that? So once we have tested our assumptions and we discover that the assumptions are all met, then we can use our independent sample test. But one thing we equally underscored was that when it comes to practical data, these assumptions might not be fully met, especially the aspect of normality and significant outliers, but the test is to an extent robust enough to give us valid results. You get it? So with that said, I think that's the principal thing that we need to note. The independent sample t-test, the dependent sample t-test is concerned. So, since we don't have a question, I want us to take a short break. Should we take a short break? We should not take a short break. Why? Let's take a short break. What did I say? Somebody say we don't have much time to study today. Really? Instead, I said that we'll close late today because there's a fear that we need to finish another. And the number of attempts is quite much compared to this other two. There are so many things we have to see as ANOVA is concerned. Then let's just take a 10 minutes break when we come back. Yes. Let's take a short break when we are back. So we'll find the class online. You can fast forward. Learn outside. Outside. No, don't feel discouraged. We want to offer you up to the world of business now. You're new into the world of this business, right? Yes. Having the website is just one thing. Hosting a website. Now, that's why I say it depends on the nature of website you're hosting, and your website is not the one that you can host and sit. How do you think that has to be uploaded on the website? What do you think the area agent will be doing? So, how many houses do you think a person will be able to upload? So to get in a day? So the unfortunate thing is that let's continue our class to discuss the maybe the latter part of the class. It's an interesting domain, right? You are venturing into something that's interesting. So we can discuss that as our class may progress. But the issue is that one of the things I like your ambition. I see that you're highly ambitious. Yes, highly ambitious, which is good. And you just need some mentorship when it comes to business, because a lot of business is quite tricky. You get it? Yes, wonderful ideas. We are doing data analysis. You need to start tracking data by axiom. You need to do some mathematics. How many houses can the person put per day? And if the person put five houses, what is the probability after 3 days the house will still be there, not taken? You get it? To be able to calculate the amount of work that you need to do. This house needs to be identified by an individual. You go there and give this house, say you can come here and say this house, but the next 3 hours will not be there. You're telling people the house is there. You know that you need to shut it down from your website, that this house is no more there. Otherwise, people will go there and discover that it's not there. So it's a website that needs a lot of attention, and needs a lot of agents, not an agent. Yes, so you need to build a business model that will enable people to put upload houses there, right? Or people who should be waiting to have a house, should be ready to come and post it there and so you. That's the only way. It's not unique. There are thousands of websites that have done that, are doing that. So it's to develop a business model. Otherwise, it will be challenging. But Digital Renter is doing that. I think that's the major, but there are other some. Yes. Yes. No, Digital Renter is doing it. I think it's noted. It's a major. Yes, there are other. Which page? And we might have a successful website, not necessarily on Facebook. We're just saying that now businesses, there is one thing about business. We are not going off topic. One thing about business is strategy. We're into the same business, but what makes you uniquely you is your business strategy. You get it? Yes, we can run the same business and I'm successful and you fail because of what? Strategy. It's not necessarily capital. Capital can play a role. Management can play a role, but management comes in the place of strategy. You get it? Strategy. And there are different strategies in business. Another person's strategy is price. Another one is quality. Another one is innovation. Another one is sales. So based on your business strategy and your business model, determine which strategy you can adopt. What's the business strategy for Apple? Innovation. The latest product, the latest invention. Apple wants to be the ones to say, we now have smartphones, phones without buttons. We now have phones with cameras. We now have phones with internet. We now have personal iPods and the rest, right? They're innovative. And so when your business model is innovation, you know the type of people you need to select and to recruit. There should be researchers, people who are innovative, people who are creative, right? If your business strategy is sell, which I think that you're driving to a sell, you need a higher team. You need a lot of people who will be able to go and find those houses, and maybe you should be able to have a lot of salespersons or agents, let's not use the word sales, agents will be able to look for the houses. There are people looking for houses in Limbe, but there will need to be people who go around every day to check. So you need a business model around that. You can come for counseling and for professional service and pay me some amount of money made to dish out that, right? Don't mind I'm do data analysis. This is what I do on a daily basis, but at my core, I'm a business strategist. Don't bother. When I go on retirement, this is what I'll be doing. I just mentorship, just talk and inspire. So let's get back to our class. We are now to the next key concept, and it's rather unfortunate that I'm unable to identify the slide that I prepared for this class. So, who has set up ANOVA? So what's ANOVA? So analysis of variance. Okay. When you say analysis of variance, what do you mean? What's analysis of variance all about? Gloria. What's analysis of variance? Gloria. What's analysis of variance? Samuel, what's analysis of variance? Anybody doesn't know should stand up. Glory, what's analysis of variance? If you don't know, stand up. I get that as part of assignment. You stand. If you try well, you sit. If you don't try well, you keep standing. Yes, we're listening to you. Somebody wants to run away. She's trying to trick us. What did you say? Yes. Obviously. All of us. Who here doesn't know that it's a statistical technique? Try your hand if you don't know that it's a statistical technique. Okay. Okay. Not convinced. Somebody should convince me. So, analysis of variance, the full meaning is what? Or the short form is ANOVA, right? Yes, ANOVA. And we said that ANOVA is a procedure that we use to compare the means of our groups. In this case, one of the key conditions is that we should have at least more than 2 groups. So analysis of variance is an extension of independent sample t-test. Now, if we are trying to evaluate and see the performance of group 1, group 2, group 3, using ANOVA, independent sample t-test will not be IT, right? So we still evaluate the mean of 2 or more groups. Now we can use it for two groups. But in statistics, most often we have two groups, we use the independent. But if you can still go, you get that. But principally, when you have more than two groups, we bring in ANOVA. That should sit. So with ANOVA, our interest is to see which of the groups is significantly different from the others. Are all the groups significantly different, or there's some groups that are similar and one is not? For instance, we have, let's say from 5A, B, C, D, right? And these classes are taking the same course, but taught by different teachers. You may want to evaluate and see if their performance is the same. They're in the same class, although categorized into different groups, and we expect that their performance should be the same. So you cannot give a single exam for all of them to write, but when they write, you want to evaluate and see if performance varies with respect to which group you belong. Maybe those in group A will perform far better than the rest of the groups, or maybe group D perform worse than the other three groups. You get that? So when you have such a scenario, we can use analysis of variance. A researcher may want to evaluate and see if different marketing strategies, right, perform the same or they are significantly different in terms of customer acquisition. Many times you see MTN send out people to go and do promotion. They do text messages, they do website adverts. All of these are different marketing strategies. But the company may be interested in seeing how the different marketing strategies contribute to what? Sales. Each customer comes and say, how did you know about us? I received a text message about your services. How did you know about us? I saw on a website. How do I know? Salesperson came around. After collecting the data, we verify and see which of the strategy is more efficient. Do we get that? So it's possible for us to adapt the analysis of variance. Now, one of the things we say is that analysis of variance, we also say it is an omnibus test. An omnibus test is a statistical technique that tells you that, well, the groups are different, but it doesn't tell you, it cannot tell you which of the groups, right, is significantly different. Now, we have seen that most of our customers are coming, that we have website marketing, we have cold calling, which going around salespersons, we have sending out text messages, maybe we have TV, that they're all marketing strategies or marketing outlets that we're using, right? And we run our data and see that, well, ANOVA tells you that one of the groups is significantly different, but it doesn't tell you which of the groups is actually different. Which of the group is performing better than the rest of the groups, right? Or which one is performing worse than the other groups, or which groups, maybe they're significantly different. That's why we say it is an omnibus test. And so because of this, whenever we use ANOVA and we discover that one of the groups are that there's significant difference, which means when our ANOVA values is significant, then we have to run what we call the post hoc test. Post hoc. A post hoc test is a test that we want to verify now and know which group is significantly different. There are a series of them that we'll see, right? So having identified that there is a significant difference among the groups, we now move on to test for what? The category of difference. And the category of difference is done using the post hoc test. Among the post hoc tests, we have least square difference. We have how do we call that? Again, LSD, least square difference, yes. We have the turkey test, we have the fish test, there's so many of them, we'll see. They all try to give you which category among your groups is significantly different from the others. Do we get that? So Any question? Now we've said analysis of variance, but what happens is that in analysis of variance, we have a range of different categories. We have the one-way ANOVA, called the one-way ANOVA. This is where we have one dependent variable. So which is known as one-way ANOVA. Now with two-way, we have one dependent variable and one independent variable. One dependent variable, one independent variable. But there are scenarios where we can have two independent variables and one dependent variable. You get that? Two or more. If we have two independent variables and one dependent variable, we call it two-way ANOVA. Some call it factorial. Two factorial, right? But it's important for us to see, we'll see just the one-way ANOVA, which means we have one independent variable and one dependent variable. That's the one way. That's the most basic form, right? Now, if we're doing the two-way ANOVA, we can examine the effect of one variable, which is, we call it the fixed effect, and then we examine what we call the interaction effect. Just to put in perspective, let's assume that we are trying to evaluate the effect of water or sunshine and soil fertility on the growth of plants. Now, what happens is that is a scenario that warrants what? A two-way ANOVA. A two-way in that we can examine the effect of water alone, right? We examine the effect of soil fertility also, and we can equally evaluate now what the combined effect of using water and mixing with what? Soil fertility, how it affects what? The growth of plant. Now, when we come to the combined effect, we call it, it is considered what? Interaction effect. Interaction effect. You get that? When we examine just the effect of one dependent variable, independent variable, we call it a fixed effect. But like I said, we focus our attention in this class with what? The one way, which is one dependent variable, one independent variable. The categories can be as many as possible, which we can have two, we can have 4, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 as groups, so many groups that we have. But we have one dependent and one independent variable. Any question? Samuel, you have not been asking questions again. Is it that we understand everything here or that the content here is too difficult? You know, when we started this thing, we used to ask a lot of questions. This content is too simplified or it's complex. So that's the point, right? So what are the assumptions? Like we've seen, we bring out a test, we bring its assumptions, and we see how we can do it and how to interpret our results. That is the model we're using, right? But we'll still have to do a lot of application of ANOVA when we go back. So one of the assumptions of the independent sample, the assumptions of ANOVA, or analysis of variance, is that the dependent variable must be continuous. Your independent variable must have at least 2 or more categories. I don't need to explain that, I've already done the explanation, right? For instance, if we say 2 or more categories, we may be dealing with tribes. And here I said we can have Bakosi, Bamato, and Bali. I don't know which tribes are that. But we may want to study something and see if it varies. For instance, if we are studying what now? Which tribe do you think that comes to your mind? Bongongo, which tribe now? There's no tribe Bongongo. No. Let's say Bamileke, Bamileke, which other tribe? Bayangi. Which one now? Oroko. Those are 3 tribes, right? So let's take a variable that we may want to study and see. Business. Who do we think that will perform better? Bamileke. That's our assumption, right? We can collect data and verify that, right? So let's take another variable and see that Bayangi, why would they triumph? When you say Bayangi, what comes to your mind? The Kuwer. Really? I've never done that. One thing I know, when you say Bayangi, one thing I know is that they are proud. There's an element of pride. So, right? So, okay, pride. Like seriously. I did not say it, oh, he's the one saying it, right? Please. This is a note of disclaimer. I did not say it. Yes. Now that might be his experience. It doesn't become what? A general rule, right? I know that my friend is from Bakura. I know that she is not. You're from Bali. Okay. So what is unique about Bali? At least from your own perspective. They're troublesome. So that is a perspective that we need to underscore. Now we forget about the attributes of the tribes, right? That's not important. We wanted to establish the fact that we could have 3 or more categories. We took tribe and we see that we can evaluate. Now, if we wanted to, somebody says, well, when it goes to business, the communicate, they do well. That is a hypothesis. You need to collect data and verify if that assumption is accepted or not. Welcome, Madam Sarita. And you owe Mambo. This should be the second class. This should be the second class. We are taking statistics. So, yes, we're sorry that you are late. We had already finished the whole chapter, and now we're in the next chapter, and we are almost finishing, but thank God you are here. Your colleagues will help you to catch up, right? So, what's happening? Asha, you came and did not say it in your house. Maybe a friend, maybe a friend. Yeah, they break into your house. Before they we'll pray that you see it. Yes, before we were abruptly interrupted by the interrupter, right? So what we are saying is that whenever we have more than 2 categories, we can use ANOVA, right? So we may want to study intelligence. And so tribes, which one is the more intelligent tribe? I don't know. You can decide for yourself. So data proves that, right? Somebody said there's a tribe that does business very well. That is general assumption, but data might not prove that, right? Yes, because now when we say, okay, let's try to evaluate in terms of maybe random selection and see if doing data and successful backs up based on what we use. Starting a business is not the same as succeeding, right? And so there are so many things we may want to verify. We have to use data. We say, so maybe another person says prostitution. We say one tribe is, but we can verify that with data. How do we do that? We sample. That's why sampling becomes now important. Maybe from each, about 5 tribes or 4 tribes or 3 tribes, and we say from each tribe, let's randomly select about 10 girls and verify. We will know how to verify. But in the course of verification, we need to take into account what the beauty of the girl. There are confounders that may influence our results. Do we get that? So as a statistician or a data analyst, you always need to know your data, where it comes from, and the attributes of the data, because there's a tendency that the attributes may intervene with your result. There's also conceptions, preconceptions. As a data analyst, you always want to allow data to speak and not your mind. The other day, I was in a class, we were talking about idols that prevent us from getting the truth or from getting your knowledge. We say idols from the tribe. You come from a particular community and that's how they do things. So you just automatically assume by default. Do you get it? So those are some things. Maybe there's idols of the marketplace. That has to do with the learned knowledge, what people are saying. Yes, generally because this person, we have studied economics and the principle of economics. When you go to a literature, you want to just apply the principle of economics. Or there are certain things that you think that because it's been said. Look at what the COVID-19 scandal or conspiracy. They come and say, no, everybody should wear face masks. COVID-19 is killing everybody. And so at the end of the day, you just accept what they're saying simply because it seems to be authority and they are landed. Those are different categories of idols that prevent us. But as a data analyst, you want to put all these idols and to examine what allows the data to speak. You get it? Data speaks first before your opinion. Is it true that women are more intelligent than men? It's a question. Let's verify. We collect our data. We can give a test and see who performs better. Is it true that women are more quickly get angry than men? Is it true that women talk more than men? Because some women can really be talkative. Come back, we are very It's up for debate until we get data. Do you get that? So, but we have our hypothesis. Our hypothesis is that women talk more than men. We can collect data and disprove that. So, this hypothesis I want us to be able to verify, which is that MTN is not helping Cameroonians via the Momo. I don't know how to put it, but that the Momo system has caused a, how do we call it, what we call a run-off tax. So people are tend to pay higher for services than normal because they're using the Momo. Yes, you want to transfer the cuts, this and that, and you go into a shop and they say something is 1,000. You end up spending around 1,100 because maybe 50 francs for transfer charges, 50 francs for, yes, you discover. So there's a kind of tax brought by the Momo system that we are not conscious. So I'm still thinking of how I need to conduct a small study and publish the dangers of Momo or the drawbacks of Momo, which I want to point out that it has even caused inflation. And it has contributed to inflation in that when something is 1,000, at the end of the day, you spend 1,200, and if you were to resell the thing, you need to cover that aspect that was imputed. It becomes cost that must be transferred to maybe the consumer. At the end of the day, something that you initially wanted to sell for 1,000, you're obliged to sell for 1,200 so that you can meet up that 100 francs that was and make your own gain. That's my argument, but it's still a study I'm trying to figure out so that we can now, as data analysts and statisticians, you need to be able to talk with data and to help the economy grow. So, it's clear. So that was a little bit on our side. We're asking with respect to testing hypothesis, we could say we are dealing with different categories. It could be a tribe, like we've said. Which tribe are you from, madam? No, okay. She's from, you did not give us even. Bamileke. No wonder. That's why we say she's thriving in business, right? She's business oriented. Yes. Which one is Bamungo? I don't want to tell. He don't want to tell his tribe. Bamungo. Which tribe is that? No. I agree. That's misinformation. That's misinformation. Huh? That's not true. Huh? Oh, we take all your names. It's not Bayange. Which tribe carries a Bogwen? Yeah, tribe Abo. By default, Abo. Bayange by default. You cannot deduce. Maybe some people are now mixed, and now be subtracting and say I'm boring. Right? By default, it's Bayange. But you hear Abo, you hear Sunday, you hear Egbe, you hear all of those. But Tabi, Bateayo, Nemo. Well, I have feelings about any tribe, right? things that happen to us that we don't choose. Maybe I might not like my tribe, but come from there, there's nothing I can do, right? Yes, so it's possible. If your tribe is noted for something evil and you don't want to identify with it, you may not like it, right? So one of the assumptions we have said first, dependent variable continuous independent have more than two categories. I mean, the independent have more than two categories. The third assumption was that you should have independence of observation, right? Independence of observation. We know we did not see this assumption when we were dealing with what the PET sample. Rather, we are trying to talk about correlation, which we are at least related. Independence of observation simply means a participant belongs to one category. In the basic way we can put it, right? If you belong to group 1, you cannot be in group 2. So you must belong to one group. So for somebody who says I'm Bali, you cannot tell us again that you are Batibo. Yes, cannot say you are Bayan. You know the works. So assumption number 3 says no outliers. You need to test this one, right? Yes, the first 2 assumptions or 3 assumptions, we basically observe them, but the third one we have to verify using classical technique. Which one should we use? Box plot. Another one, stem and leaf can help us. Which one again? Can use histogram and wonderful things. So assumption number 4 says the dependent variable should be approximately normally distributed for each category of the independent variable. Quite interesting. What do they mean? So when you want to run for your normality, you know you need to categorize your variable, right? We have the dependent and category list. I'm trying to help you understand what they mean. So you have to test for your independent variable across the categories and see if they're normally distributed. You don't need a composite variable to test for everything, right? You need to segregate across the different categories. Is the data normally distributed for Bakossi, Bayangi, and Bali? You get that? That's the concept that I'm trying to express. Assumption number 6 talks about what? Homogeneity of variance. Homogeneity of variance goes back to what we saw when we were doing independence. I always say what? Equality of variance. You get that? Okay. And I gave it an assignment. So any question, ladies and gents? Yes, what's your question, Nancy? Yes. You cause it to be normally distributed. You need to transform it and check why it's not normally distributed. Do we have significant outliers, or where is the problem? That way you must always run some of those tests to verify. You get that? Yes. So, anyone? We have some examples here just to help us understand. A manager wants to raise the productivity of his company by increasing the speed at which his employees can use a particular program. We call it Photoshop for designing. So, as he does not have the skills in-house, he employs an external agency which provides training in this program. They offer different courses, a beginner's level, an intermediate, and an advanced. And so after doing that, he is unsure which of the groups now will perform better. So he tried to conduct a small study by sampling out about 10 of them. What am I trying to establish with this example? You can use this test when you have different categories. And so long as the categories are more than 2, we can use the independent sample t-test. Now, in a company, we may want to evaluate performance. We may want to evaluate sales. We may want to, for instance, I can take sales and marketing strategy as we saw earlier, right? I can take performance, maybe If you go to an institution that have different categories, let's say age, I say, okay, those between 0 to 30, 30 to 45 and above, who performs better, I can use them, right? I may want to evaluate performance with respect to experience. I may want to evaluate performance with respect to level of education. So it gives you possibilities of using this same test so long as the categories are more than, you get it. So that's a situation. Another, that one is limited, is still similar to this example that says a chain store wants to know if the different in types of advertisement affect sales. We have already mentioned about sales, right? That you can test and see if sales differs with respect to different promotional strategies, right? If sales differ with respect to location, selling in 3 different regions, which region sells more? Well, maybe I'm receiving higher sales from a particular location. Doesn't necessarily mean that it's significantly different from other regions, right? What about profitability? You can test using this particular technique. So once we do that, we can report our results. Can I mix up? So in all, ANOVA is used in a variety of real-world situations. You can talk of medical or science, business, sociology, and so on and so forth. Health is medical, so be clear. Any question? So that's the theoretical part. So the application, if we don't have a question, do you have any question? No question. Any worry? Okay. So let's go back to our exercise of weights. These wonderful students that we have, do we think that smoking has anything to do with weight? Are you sure? What will happen with the weight when you smoke? You reduce. That's the assumption that you have. Is it true, Nemo? Okay, when you smoke, you be fresh. Like me. Like me. Now, it becomes what? A worry for research. You get that? Now, we are talking about weight and not the size. You get to differentiate the two. Do we get that? So the question we're asking, if weight has something to do with smoking, if there is any significant difference as weight is concerned, so we can verify and see those who smoke, those who have stopped smoking, and those who have never smoked, who has higher weight? It's a scientific question that we can verify, right? And since we have data that gives us that information, can we test it? Do I need to teach you how to do it? You already know that. Analyze, compare means you see ANOVA. You see one way ANOVA, right? You see we're dealing with one way ANOVA. So we just take our weight, sharp, and we take our smoking. Now, when we are doing our independent sample t-cell, we need to define our groups, but here we don't define because the program automatically identifies the groups, so we don't have to. So now, if you click on contrast, we say polynomial, but we are not very much interested in that. Post hoc. I mentioned the aspect of post hoc, right? We say we use the post hoc test when we have identified that there is a significant difference. So, which means you might not take the post hoc when you are still testing whether there's a difference, right? Okay, let's just ignore it for now. Options here we have, we may want to get the descriptive statistics, so we click on that. Now, if you have 1 or 2 variables, we may take fixed and random effect, which I say was random or interaction effect, right? But we're dealing with 1, so let's ignore that. Now, if our data is not normally distributed, we may choose to use 1. The brand first site, or how do I pronounce that one? Or the wish test. These are two different tests that we can employ them when you are dealing with data that might not be normally distributed. Do you get it? And so we can equally have a plot of our means to check the situation. So we can take the two, and let's take now, okay. So what do we notice? The test, okay, still running because of that. Potentially it asks a lot of information, it takes some time. So first, we're looking at our descriptive. We have three categories. You can see, we have it there, right? So, do we see now? So, let's look at the descriptive statistics from our first table. We look at the weights. Who has the highest weight? Look from my own borrow. Yours is still loading. The okay part is not highlighted. Which variable did you take? I've put one under dependent list. Which one did I put? The weight, because that's a dependent variable. Then I put my independent variable, that the factor list. So the okay should come. Sarah? So what do we notice? It's nicely out. So interpret the results now, fellow Cameroonians. What's happening? What happened? Tell us now. Yeah. No. Forget about the end. Look at the means. That's what's important right now. How did you But people are using that word significant difference. It's just like I should look for a knife. Cut your heads off. The first thing is that how do you say no significant difference when you are examining the descriptive statistics? You should talk about there's a difference, not significant, because significant, I cannot draw whether it's significant or not without using the ANOVA test. If you're still looking at the descriptive, you cannot conclude whether it's significant or insignificant. Rather, when you are looking at descriptive, you are saying that I expected you should be saying that the mean for or that the average weight for those past smokers is higher than the other two categories. That's the only thing we noticed from that data. And that the weight for non-smokers and current smokers are almost the same. That's the information we gather. Now, in terms of variation, we discovered that the variation for is relatively higher for what? Current smokers compared to the other two categories. However, the highest variation or the lowest variation is recorded for what? Non-smokers. Now, the question is, since we have seen that we have a difference, the question always comes up, if there is a difference, is that difference significant or not? That's when we go now to ANOVA results. If we had the same means for all of them, then it means that it's not different. We don't even need the ANOVA results. But since we have seen that one group seems to be having a higher mean, right, compared to the other two, can we draw a conclusion that the mean is significantly different or the same? That's why we use the ANOVA results now. What's the conclusion we can draw? Okay. Those who say that there is significant difference should indicate with the hand. Dr. Glory, where are you? Significant or no significant? There's significant difference. If you know there's significant difference, give your hand. So is your hand up or down? Nemo. So your hand up or down? All of you should stand. Should stand. So starting with you, why do you think there's significant difference? I already indicated I cannot use ANOVA. I cannot use descriptive to say significant difference or not. So it means you don't know. Yes. Yeah. Okay. Nemo. Look at standard deviation. Yes. Which is 2. I do not see 2 as a 2. We also have a 2. I don't have combined standard deviation. Oh, this students people disgrace me. Oh. Glory, can I explain? Okay. I missed the rest of the class now. Keep standing. Because it's strange. Why did you use by F? We've not been given P. We've not been given P. This is serious. So I just close this class and go home and cry. Spend some time crying. Yes, but not when you have learned If it was something new, we expect that now we have F and probability. So you're looking at the F value, it's like the T that we saw. And we have given you the significant value. So you're supposed to use the significant value now to tell us whether it's insignificant or not. It will be. So what's the implication of that? Good. Good attempts. I think you've said it well. Sit. But you have a contrary perspective. Then where's the perspective?
Now that we have
why do you have a challenge?
We are and down here we have we have
Who can answer? For those standing. Who can help us answer? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I'm crying. I told you I need to cry. Oh, I'm still crying. We should ask Sandra to explain again. Sandra has explained already. Sandra, explain again for those who are standing. If they can reproduce what you have explained and it's appropriate, they will sit. So their sitting is dependent on Sandra, not me now. It's only past 5. Okay. Who is sitting? I don't recall asking those who have not answered my question. The one is different. Between, I think all of us have done it. It depends on what you went and took. There. Between groups, within groups. It should be there. If you look at my, it's not portraying. So let's look at, I'm going to have this shirt. Can you see my screen? So this is data with respect to different categories. You have weight of a produce, and what happens is that it's like you're planting what now? Let's contextualize it. Tomato, right? So you have planted tomato and you have used 2 types of fertilizers, and the weight is used to measure the size after they produce, just to help you understand. So in order for you to do that, we did not apply fertilizer in one of the pieces of land, another one fertilizers, then we use chemical fertilizer. So it gives us what? how many categories? 3 categories, right? After we have done that, now we want to examine if there is any significant difference from the output in terms of weight. We're measuring the difference in terms of weight. So to do that, we have our data set. We can go to analyze, and at times it's recommended to test the assumptions, like I said. But we want to visualize and see if we have significant outliers in this data set by using a different method, not what we have seen previously. So I can go to charts, and I take legacy, and I take histograms. I'm just trying to show you another way. So my variable here is grams, and my categories will be fertilizers. And so what do we need to put again? Let me put on the columns. Let's just take OK and see what we have. Trying to see how our histograms will be. Do we see the output? So why I brought this is because she mentioned that we can use the histogram to also test for outliers, right? And even normality, which we stated previously. We need to test these are the different categories. Remember hypothesis 6 or so. Assumption number 6. Check assumption number 6 from our slides. Was that the data should be fairly normally distributed across categories. That's one of the reasons we're bringing this. So if you look at this chart, do we think the data is normally distributed? It's fairly normal, right? When we have outliers, it will be that we have points that are far away from, I mean, be very high or too low. But since it flows from the center to the left or to the edges, it shows that fairly normality. Let me see if I can superimpose the normal distribution curve here. Oh, we have it here. Let me see. No, this one. No. Okay, this should be it. So we're saying so based on this, we see our normal distribution. So our normal curve, normality curve, right? Initially, we had just a histogram, but because we have superimposed it casts out the area of normality, and we see that almost all the points fall within under the curve, right? Pointing that there's high probability that all the data is normally distributed, is not skewed and centralized. So across the different categories, this is for non-fertilizer, piece of land, or output fertilizer, biochemical, biological and chemical fertilizers. Those are different categories of fertilizer we have used. You get that? So having checked now, we see that the data is fairly normal, giving you a different strategy to test. So what again? The box plot. So let's use box plot since we want to combine our knowledge now. I expect that people should be professional, but they are still making me feel that. So let's test now using the box plot. To do it, we go to, we want to test, use box plot, how do we do? We go to If she's not ready, who can answer? Yes, analyze. Go to descriptive. Pardon? Go to explore. Talk. Who is talking? Nobody's talking. From explore. Is it okay? Is it true? You go to analyze. Descriptive. What do we take? Name or sit down. Try. We take explore. From explore, what do we do now? We want to examine. What should we do? Which one is dependent factor and which one is? I don't know. So help me out. Those are the variables. I don't know. Look at the variables and give me all the people. It's for those who are standing. First, weight and smoking. Look at my data. I think my screen is here. So look at this data. What should I do from here? I've gone to where he said we should go. What should I do? What should I do? Okay. What should I do next? Okay. What should I do now? Plots. Glory. What she said, is she right? She right? I don't know. Let's check results. So you cannot sit down. So you are wrong. So where can the problem be? Okay, let's go back there. Okay. No, I don't know now. I don't know these things. So what do we do now? What should I do? Okay. So what should we do? Go to plots. What should we do? What should we do? Continue. So, who can interpret for us? Mondo standing. What do we notice? Do we have outliers? No outliers. Where is the looking at this? Where do we think we have a fairly higher weight. What do we have the highest weight? You don't know. Let's come back here. Our interest is not. Okay, let's look at normality. Okay. So normality, for those standing, looking at the data, is it normally distributed or not across the different categories? Hello? Who is talking? You don't know? Sonny? Yes. That's the more reason you should look scary. This is not the first time. It's not the second time. It's not the third time, I'm sure. So what's scaring it? This test of normality, this is my table. Interpret the results. What do you want to see from where again? We are running our mouths like that and going ahead. This is revision. I'm bringing this because it's like people don't understand some of these basic things. And we have been using them over and there. The data is normally distributed. You don't even know how to test it, whether it's normally or not. So I had to bring this. Is it normally distributed or not? It's not normally distributed. So you're sitting. So even if your answer is valid, it will not help somebody. Sandra, is it normally distributed or not? Look at what I have here. Forget about the box plot. I know you look at it. And if I expect that people have to look at it, but say it. But the box plot will not tell you that it's normally distributed. The box plot can tell you about our lives. Yeah, to an extent. But did you see the mean and the median on the box plot? You saw the mean. That line is the median. No. Are you sure the one of which one is of is the mean? Don't misquote me. Let's go there. Which one is the mean? This is the median. This is the median. This is the median. So which one is the mean? This one. This gap up. No, this cannot. The mean is a value. It's not an area. Like the median here, this line is pointing to, if I draw from here, I know that the median is 50 for this variable for non-fertilizer category. For biological, if I take, so I know that the median is around maybe 53 or so. I'm estimating this one is around 58 or so. How do I get the mean then? I don't get the mean from here. I don't know where I cannot say exactly where the mean is. Then I know that this and this, they are giving us the max and mean, excluding significant values. This is the first quartile, this is the third quartile, these two places. So we are back to our, yes, here. Madam Senator, we are already doing a punishment. Yeah. You tell them what I did like that. Driving recklessly. Yeah, that's the benefit of doing the punishment. All right. Good glory. It's better. Oh, so Sandra, interpret now. Why? Take one and just use one switch that to your. Yes. Okay. Mhm. Yeah. So there are two persons standing. Choose one to sit. Choose one person to sit. There you stand. You join them in standing. Huh? Because she's supposed to, she has not acted according to the instructions. It's part of the disciplinary process. Normally distributed, not significant. I talk about normality. Understand? Choose one person to sit. I don't want two persons to be standing. No, you are not, no, do not ask you to choose. You don't have the liberty to. No, you are not given. We did not give you the liberty to choose, so you don't have. Your answer is invalid. Sandra, in leadership, you are obliged to make decisions. There are trade-offs, and you must make such decisions. Sit. If she had asked you to sit, okay, Glory, sit. Right. Now we're learning statistics, but we're also learning relationship, right, and decision making. You get it? What? We're not saying. Why? Do you see now? Hmm? Do you see the board now? The issue is the light. Huh? It will be beaten. So when we are studying, although so we've tested and we have seen that our data is normally distributed, there are no significant outliers, right? So we can go ahead and run what our ANOVA test. So my friend who is standing, how do I do now? Where do I go? I'll go to analyze. Compare means, what should I do? One way or another. What do I do now? Dependent list. So what should I do now? Let's take okay. Yes, sit. Glory, sit down. I mean, sorry, Senorita, sit down. Yes, sit and sleep. When you sleep, we'll know how to manage the issue of sleep. But for now, you are doing punishment. So sit. So, what do we notice? If I call your name and you're unable to answer, you stand. Yes. I just came up with a single test. Did not take other details. What can be the conclusion? Do we think that fertilizer has had any impact on the growth or on the weight of the crops? Hello? Can we conclude that fertilizer is affecting the weight? Okay. Why? How did you come out with the difference in significance?
No.
So is this significant or insignificant? So what's the implication? Fertilizers affect the growth of plants. Are you doing premeditated? The weight. Now, why am I doing this approach? I've discovered that if we keep moving ahead and doing, we need to be revising these things and seeing the application, right? Yes. So what is important when you run your ANOVA? We are interested in the F value and the significant level. And based on previous explanation, we all agree that if our significant, also known as the P value, is less than 0.05, then we conclude that there is what? Significant effect, right? Now, since we said ANOVA is an omnibus test, and I explain what an omnibus test means, it means it has a power, the possibility of telling us that whether there is significant difference or there is no significant difference among the categories. But the limitation is that it cannot tell us which group is significantly different, because if it asks you, okay, yes, we have 3 groups: fertilizer and non-fertilizer, chemical and biological. Which of the groups has the highest weight? You may not be able to give me. And which of the groups is significantly different from the others, right? You can still give that information. But this is all about the ANOVA test. Do you get it? That's why we cannot limit ourselves just to the ANOVA. We may need to request for other information. And to request for other information, that's why we come here. Yes. Yes. It's significant. Yes. If you take 0.0028, it's less than 0.5. I mean, less than 5%, or less than 0.05. 0.028 is less than 0.05. 28 is less than 0.05. How do you know? Simply convert to percentages and see that this 2.8% and 5%. Maybe so. So, having said that, we now have to go back and request more information, right? I come to ANOVA I go to contrast, we say for now, contrast is not important. We take, now I've noticed that there is what? A significant difference among the groups. We cannot choose amongst the numerous tests. There are so many other tests that you can check. We have LSD, least square difference. We have Bonferroni. We have Sida, Schaefer, and Pecky, Dukan, Dinet. These are all different tests that we can use, right? We don't need to use all of them. Some of them are relatively sensitive to different scenarios. And equally, based on the assumption, equal variance assume and equal variance not assume. Which one do you choose? But that is important. If we have equal variance assume, which means we have tested for homogeneity, which was one of the hypothesis assumptions. We saw it, right? Did we see it? We saw it when we were doing assumptions. So we'll choose among these first, but if equal variance assume, we choose among these two. So let's assume that equal variance assume. So we can take, most often people go with either this or this. So we'll just take the two and see how they play out. So we may go and request more information. We needed to request this to determine whether equal variance assume or not assume has been, which of the assumption holds, right? Homogeneity of variance tests, which is one of the conditions that we said you need to check. So not to give us a lot of information, let's just take continue. We take OK. If I go with this, now what happens is that the Turkey or the shift test give us almost the same results. Do we get it? Now what happens if you check here, they take one category and compare it with the rest of the other categories. For instance, we take the first variable, the first category, which is non-chemical, non-fertilizer. We compare whether there's any significant difference between non and the biological group. This is the mean difference. The mean difference means the difference between the mean of the non-chemical group and the biological group. You get it? So what is the mean? The mean is 2 points. Is this significant or not? It's insignificant. Do you get it? And we can use the upper and the lower limit principle we said. Meaning that between the categories, the weights for the non-fertilizer group and the biological group, we have what? No significant difference. There's a difference, but that difference is what? It's not significant. So we take still and the chemical group, what do we notice? The mean is higher and it's significant, meaning that there's high possibility for us to conclude that the group that is significantly different from the rest of the group is what? Is the chemical group. This is supported by our box plot that we saw. Do you get it? The values from the box plot were significantly higher than the rest if you were keen about checking all the items. Prof. Nemo, are you lost? So that is the idea. Do we get that? So we can take the chemical group and also test, and we expect that the result should be the same. Do we get it? Yes. So basically, we come here. So the two tests are almost the same. So if you come here now, let me go and run and bring just one because I'm putting the two. I know that if our brain doesn't process fast, you might be seeing double. So post hoc, let me take just one. And then let me request descriptive statistics for us to better appreciate. Let's start with the descriptive statistics. So we have the mean and the standard deviation for our different categories. Where do we have the highest mean? The chemical, right? So what are we saying? The produce from the chemical chemical fertilizer has the highest weight compared to biological and non-fertilizer. That's the first thing we're depicting. Now, is this difference significant? That's the next question we're asking. And that, to help us, is the ANOVA table. And looking at the ANOVA table, we discovered that we have our F here, and we have our significant value, right? Our significant value is less than 0.05, meaning that there is a significant difference. So the difference between these categories is significant. That's what we are noticing. But which of the groups is significantly different? It could be that the non-chemical, the non-fertilizer group is significantly different from the chemical and the biological, right? Or maybe the biological is significantly different from the non-fertilizer and the chemical. Or all the three groups are significantly different from each other. Do you get that? So how do we draw conclusion? How do we conclude? That's where we go and request our post hoc test. Do you get it? We now go with the post hoc test. Now the post hoc test, most often they try to do multiple comparisons. The first one gives you the multiple comparison. I think you might not be very much interested in the multiple comparison. So we might not be very much interested in this one. Most of the times you might not have to report this part. You get it? Multiple comparison simply means we are taking each category and comparing with the others. Take one and compare, take one and compare. But we can very much look at the overall group comparison. So what we notice here is that we compare this. And these are our three categories. And they have grouped that, okay, if we want to group them, non-fertilizer category and chemical fertilizer category, they're almost on the same group. They group them as one category, right? And the next category is that of what? The chemical, which is alone. Do you get it? However, we could put chemical and biological closer. If we're looking at the highest performing groups, we see that the top groups that are performing based on what we want to will be the chemical and the biological. That's where we can also come here and see that the two of them are on the same length, right? And if we're taking maybe from the lower end, we see that the non and the chemical, they're almost the same. But in overall, we see that there is a significant difference among the groups. We can either classify the two groups that chemical and biological go together, or biological and what? And non-fertilizer category, they go together, depending on what we are very much interested in. But the group with the highest weight is the chemical. The least weight comes from what? The non-fertilizer category. Ladies and gentlemen, be clear. Yes. F is like T. Fisher test is exactly like T. So your function is the same. You get it? That are using by Fisher test here. We'll still see the F. We'll still see ANOVA with regression, but the interpretation there will mean something else. You get it? Here they talk about differences in categories, but when we see in ANOVA, will mean something else. I mean, in regression means something else. It has something to not really, it has something to do with the population, because it looks at the distribution. We are assuming they come from what? A non-population with what? A normal distribution. You get it? A non-population that is normally distributed. There's a fixed a population that we're targeting, not just anything. It comes from a uniform, a defined population with a known distribution, and the distribution is what? Normal. It's not a uniform distribution. It's not binomial, but rather what? A normal distribution, or you may hear the word Gaussian distribution. or predicted probability distribution. I think they are all mean the same. So, having said that, any question? Any worry? This has been the best day of the class. Right? The day was not good. Was deep. But we're accumulating, right? As you get, as you learn more, you'll be understanding what you learn behind. It's progressive. But get stronger.
Thank you.
Right? So tomorrow we come and continue with correlation and regression. I think if time permits, we'll start regression. So, yes. Go and revisit. I think, yes, because that's the new, initially we just wanted to welcome us. We are now statisticians. We are getting to a point of certification. And so we need to start validating the knowledge. Hey, Glory.